One of the important aspects of visual design that could bear some deeper examination is the way in which you, as a layout designer, can provide various kinds of visual cues that make your layouts easier to interpret. Let's look at a few of the things that are going on with this example notes layout. First of all, the chosen theme provides a clear delineation of the header and the main body part of the screen, separating the upper area and allowing its use for general information about the layout and its content. In FileMaker, this is the header part in layout mode, and the lower section containing the border near the bottom of the window is the footer. While all layout parts are optional, the concept of a header and footer is one that's well understood by users, so why not tap into that understanding to provide instantly recognizable spaces for general contextual information. In this case, I've included only the name of the table in the header area, but the header might also be a suitable place for a system or company logo, while the footer area might include status information about which account is logged in, navigation controls, and so on. All the general supporting detail that isn't part of the main business of the layout. The very first thing you need to know when you come to the layout is what it is and what it does. So notice how the heading has a drop shadow that gives the illusion of being thrown a little forward off the surface of the screen. Because it appears to be ever so slightly raised, the sense that it's the first thing we encounter is strengthened. Not only is it at the top, but it's further out towards us, if you like. So even if subconsciously, we accept it as the point of entry, and our eyes must go past it to reach the layout surface behind it. Within the body of the layout, notice that the upper rectangle, enclosing the top group of objects, has border effects that make it darker on the top and left, and lighter on the right and bottom. This gives a slight illusion of depth, as though the panel is set back slightly into the surface of the screen. So now we have an appearance of dimensionality in the layout, with the heading standing forward and a panel set ever so slightly back into the plane of the screen. And we're using this to give a sense of space, to draw the user's eye in and delineate different levels of information. These effects are not particularly difficult to create and use. The drop shadow effect on the heading is the simplest gimmick of all. It's simply two copies of the text object with different text colours applied, and they're stacked, one in front of the other, with the front one offset a pixel or two upwards and to the left. The upper rectangle uses the theme style for field objects, but with the border on the bottom and right turned off, to give a strengthened sense of depth. You can see that the theme also gives the field boxes themselves a slight appearance of depth, or of being set back, which helps to represent a further layer of hierarchical organisation of the information. First, your eye enters the recessed panel that contains a group of objects. Then it enters each of the field boxes in turn to view their contents. Since the field boxes are objects that contain information, it makes sense for them to be engraved. But the button objects are controls for the user to click on. So like buttons on a real-world appliance, it makes a certain sense for the user if they have a slightly raised appearance. And again, that's provided by the theme style for button objects. With these styles used consistently throughout the layout, it quickly becomes apparent to the user what the nature of each element is, and when a convention of this kind carries through the various screens of the solution, it'll help users to make sense of unfamiliar screens. Although this is a very simple layout, it has a couple of other important visual cues. Firstly, the information is arranged in a sequence that takes you from the general and contextual details in the box at the top down towards the more specific and particular. And the New Note button, which might frequently be a starting point for the user, is near the top of the screen, whereas the Save button, most often the logical endpoint for the user's visit to a screen, is near the bottom. Also, the fields that wouldn't normally be editable by the user have a shaded fill, whereas the fields that the user might wish to enter and edit data in are lighter. Again, carrying a cue of this kind throughout a solution is an aid to the user's understanding about what's expected. Finally, beyond the graphical and functional considerations, FileMaker also allows you to support users with text in the form of tooltips. On this layout, I've applied tooltips to both the buttons, and they're visible in browse mode when the mouse pauses over a button for a moment. A tooltip can be applied in layout mode by selecting the object and entering or editing the tooltip text in the field provided over in the inspector. It's that easy.